Using organic mulch is incredibly important for garden success. Join me today as I share with you 4 great organic mulches that you can usually get for free. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and the first on the list of these wonderful mulches is leaves. Bags and bags of leaves. And I've already got a trailer load, and I'll be picking up another trailer load next week because I think leaves are among the best mulches that you could use in the garden. And in autumn, they fall from trees. And all you have to do is rake them up and put them in bags. Or, like I do because I don't have a lot of trees, I ask my neighbors and my friends and my family for their bags of leaves, and then I go and pick them up. I use dried leaves throughout my garden throughout the year. In autumn, I spread them pretty freely depending on how many leaves I have. On my perennial vegetable beds like this one where I've got rhubarb, I'll just go ahead and spread the leaves, and this adds a nice cover going into the winter. On beds like this one, where I've got strawberries, same thing. Just a nice covering of the leaves. Now I'll crush them up a little bit. But that's not completely necessary. Crushed leaves do break down faster, and they're less likely to blow away. But for an initial cover going into winter, I just use whatever leaves I have. I've already amended these beds and planted garlic last month. As the mulch to cover the garlic going into winter, I include crushed leaves. I use straw, I use the crushed leaves, and as you'll see in just a second, I also like to use dried grass clippings. I use a lot of leaves in autumn as a mulch, which is why I'm always on the hunt for more. Because mulch offers many great benefits, particularly going into the winter. You shouldn't have bare soil in your garden if you can avoid it. Mulch helps moderate soil temperature, soil moisture, and provides food for all of your soil life. And in winter and spring, the mulch helps reduce possible soil erosion. This is a year-round type of mulch, so I'll save a lot of these bags and use them in spring when I'm planting and throughout the growing season. And then next year, I'll go ahead and get more bags so that I always have a good supply of that fantastic mulch. Another great mulch is dried grass clippings. All you have to do is rake up the leaves to get that for free. Well, all you have to do is rake up or mow up the grass clippings to get this for free. Note that I like to use dried grass clippings. You can use wet, fresh, green grass clippings, but they have a tendency of clumping together if you use too much. And they can form a pretty dense barrier that air and water can't get through to get to your soil. If you've ever seen the underside of your lawnmower where you take a screwdriver and have to pry out that really hard, dense material, that's all grass clippings, and you could cause the same thing on your bed. To avoid it, wait until the grass clippings dry, and then you don't have that worry about clumping because the air and the water flows pretty freely through the dried grass. Also note that when I use the grass clippings and when I use leaves, I make sure that they haven't been treated with any herbicide or pesticide or any type of chemical control because I want clean organic material that's finding its way to my beds. To facilitate the drying of the grass, I'll dump it in a pile that just happens to be near my compost pile. And then occasionally I'll turn it, I'll fluff it up, or else it will compact and you'll get that really dense green layer at the bottom. And this is available to use year-round, just like the leaves. Once this is completely dry, I'll bag this up and I'll store it so that I can use it when I'm starting seeds in my garden. It's just a really light mulch, and most seedlings can pop right through it. And I'll continue to use it by itself or mixed with the other organic materials throughout the gardening season. Crushed leaves are great, and dried grass clippings are great. And when you combine the two, it becomes even better. I get my grass clippings from my buddy Steve, and it's particularly good at the end of the season when you can mow the leaves that have fallen on top of the grass. And then you get that combination of crushed leaves and grass clippings, already mixed together and all ready to make a great mulch. Another great mulch that you can often get for free is wood chips. And I just had this load delivered recently for free. In the United States, there's a service, Chip Drop, and I'll put a link to it below, that partners arborists, the ones that are cutting down trees and tree limbs and then chipping them up, with gardeners like me. And by using a service like Chip Drop, when there's a load to be delivered in my neighborhood, I'm on the list because I've asked for wood chips. This load that I got recently was a relatively small load. That's one of the gambles you have to take with Chip Drop. You never know exactly how much you're going to get. It might be a very small load, it might be a very large load. And there are many cities and towns, municipalities that offer a very similar service for free, where arborists drop off their chips at a public location, and then you just go and pick it up for free. You probably noticed that I'm stressing the word free, because these organic mulches are not only great to use in the garden, but one of their chief benefits is that they won't cost you any money if you just do a little bit of research and find a source for your own. I use wood chips in a lot of the garden, more than any other type of mulch. They're in my perennial beds, they're around my bushes and shrubs, and in an area like this, they're around my young fruit trees. And so the wood chip mulch that's covering this entire area is about 6 inches deep. That's a lot of wood chips. And if I had to pay to have those delivered, well, it might not have been worth the effort. But when you can find a free source like I have through Chip Drop or through a municipal nonprofit that I have nearby where I can pick up a load of wood chips, it really makes it easy for you to cover a large area with a deep mulch and not spend anything in the process. Another great free option for mulch is pine needles or pine straw. Now, I don't have any pine trees of my own, but my neighbor does. And when they rake up the pine needles, guess who gets them? And so when I get those bags like these that I just dumped out, they're ready to use throughout the garden. Or, like those bags back there, they're ready to use whenever I want to use them in the garden throughout the gardening year. It's a myth that pine needles will acidify your soil, that they'll change the pH. Dried pine needles won't do that. So I use them almost exclusively in areas like this, where I've got my goji berries and strawberries. I love to mulch my strawberries with the pine needles. I'll also mix the pine needles with leaves or wood chips when I want a deep mulch like the fruit trees behind me, because pine needles do take a long time to break down. That's a reason why I also like to use pine needles as a mulch on my garden paths near the vegetable beds. These garden paths have a layer of pine needles a couple inches deep, and then a layer of wood chips a couple inches deep. Now, the pine needles will break down faster than the wood chips, helping to enrich the soil between the beds. By enriching the soil between the beds, that helps ensure that any soil life can move back and forth between these beds, benefiting all of them. The biggest benefit to using a mulch like this in a pathway is that it cuts down on weeds. Very few of us like to pull weeds, and I really don't like to pull weeds in an area where no plants are growing. So a mulch like the pine needles and the wood chips in an area like this can benefit the soil, the entire space, and cut down on the tasks of weeding. These 4 organic mulches are relatively easy to find if you look for a source. A bonus mulch, if you can find it, is straw. Now, I really like to use straw in my garden, but I buy the straw bales because I haven't found a good source of straw yet. But if you know somebody who has horses or alpacas or llamas and they use straw as bedding in the stall, well, take that straw from them. You might have to rake out the stall yourself, but it can be a great mulch in the garden. And it's often mixed with urine or manure, which helps add nutrients to the soil as this kind of mulch breaks down. Lots of great options, free options, for good organic mulches. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.